Hello, it's Michelle Perkins. I'm the host of the Money and You Show, and I have a question for you. Have you considered a career in tech? Are you in a career in tech? And are you really wanting to move that career to the next level? And it's such a wide open, amazing industry right now. So how do you navigate it? And there's money there. So while this is the Money and You Show, we want to help you to earn more in that particular sector. So let's go. Your relationship with money matters. I'm Michelle Perkins, and this is the Money and You podcast, where I will be breaking down your relationship with money, offering tough love money tips, and a money dating plan that will focus on lifting the barriers to success to help pave the way for better money practices and increased wealth. It's time to take control to live a limit-free life. It starts today. Hello, hello. We are here today to talk a little about career, how you make money. Your relationship with money has a lot to do with how you decide to earn money and to earn a living and how much you want to go after. So today I'm really lucky to have a fabulous guest with me, Claudia Miller. I'm going to introduce her. She is a high-level career coach in the tech industry. So I'm going to start and then we'll bring her in. Claudia Miller is a sought-after career coach for women in tech, and she's helped her clients land fulfilling jobs at a senior level. She also partners with companies and organizations in identifying rising stars within their organizations and providing strategy, insights, and support in developing a leadership and talent pipeline with a focus on women and women of color. Due to her efforts, she's worked with top Fortune 500 clients and has partnered with the World Business Chicago in developing a workforce development strategy in coordination with the City of Chicago's efforts in decreasing unemployment rates for persons of color. She's also the creator and host of a Roadmap to the Executive Suite podcast. Due to her client success, she's been featured multiple times in Forbes, MSNBC, Thrive Global, and Business Insider put her in their top global list of top innovative career coaches. Claudia, welcome.
Hi, Michelle. Thanks. I'm so happy to be here, and I'm excited about what we're going to be talking about today.
I'm so happy to have you. I'm sorry I stumbled a little over your bio because it's so tiny on my phone, and even with my glasses, I'm like, I can't see. So, but you are very impressive, and hopefully I'll put that in the show notes as well so people can see your background, even if they couldn't make out what I said. So thank you so much. We have so much to talk about today. So I want to just start with some background on how you ended up here and some of the things that you do.
Yeah, I consider myself to be an ambitious professional. So, I did everything by the book. I went to school, I did the internships. I'm a full ride Gates Millennium Scholar, which means that they paid for my bachelor's, my master's, and if I wanted to get my PhD, they would have paid for it as well. Wow. So I thought that, once graduating, I should have all the interviews start pouring in, all fighting to hire me. And unfortunately, that was not the case. So of course, that was very disappointing. And I felt hopeless and helpless as well, just to figure out, I did everything, but yet that wasn't enough for me to be sought after. Mm-hmm. So I really embarked on this journey, which took me about close to 3 years, to really studying winners, or people I consider to be winners. How did some of these professionals that just always seem to get lucky, get promoted, get accelerated, and are handpicked by the CEO for specific roles, how are they doing it? And how do these professionals that are masters at really taking control of the career, how are they doing it? So, of course, it took a lot of hours and years and resources and time, and I reached out to them, and finally I was able to build a repeatable process and framework for myself that allow me to go from finance to education to healthcare in the state nonprofit space. And then I pivoted into the profit health insurance space, all while receiving $30,000 salary increases every single time. And now throughout the years now, I've been doing this now close to 8 years, been perfecting this process where now my clients have able to been doing the same, but they've also received even up to $120,000 in additional earned income.
Wow. That's great. Mm-hmm. Yeah, that's amazing. And it really speaks to why it's important to hire someone to help you navigate this space of moving up and getting promotions, and it is something that needs to be figured out. I love that you brought up kind of your expectations coming out of college, having been so successful, because I see that out there, and I feel for people who they work so hard to do the things that they think are going to immediately, result in a lot of interviews and a lot of job offers, and sometimes it doesn't happen that way. And I feel like people should have some different expectations coming up, because it's a rather unpredictable kind of landscape to navigate. And so sometimes you can do everything you think you should do, and it still doesn't work out, and you still have to hang in there and persevere and figure it out. So any words of wisdom for people just trying to figure that out and being disappointed?
Yeah, so unfortunately, I mean, there is a process, and that's what I teach my clients. So whether there's a recession coming up or whatever may be happening in the market, which we cannot control, there is a process where my clients now, a lot of companies we've heard have been doing hiring freezes. They're resending back job offers, and some of them have just stopped hiring overall, or they're just waiting because they don't have a lot of confidence in the market. Yeah, I've had my clients being, they've been job searching for 2 years, and now they started working with me. In less than 90 days, they've landed job offers. And, one of my clients just told me she's landed a 75% salary increase offer. Mm-hmm. Another client received close to $100,000 in salary increases. Wow. And another client was able to finally land these roles and received a 30% salary increase. So there's definitely there's always a market. There's companies always hiring for top sought after candidates, especially when it comes to recessions, because then they have to look for the right candidate that can help them through the recession. Mm-hmm. And again, I work with clients that I know that I can help. Yeah. And because of that, I'm able to brand them, find their market differentiator that's going to make them stand out from the market. And then even then, I show them how to stay competitive, and even I'll beat candidates who have years of experience in that role. And here they are landing their first director role, or their first senior director role, or their first chief technology officer role successfully, even though this is the first time, being in that role, and they've still been able to outbeat candidates with years of experience. Because at the end of the day, businesses want to hire someone that can help solve their problems, their challenges, or their pain. And that's how I position my clients, to be able to communicate that, be able to sell themselves, and being able to really, like I said, being able to find that market differentiator that usually my clients are told that your skills are unmatched. No one even comes close to what you have to offer. We want to make sure we send you a job offer as soon as possible, because we know you're interviewing at other companies.
And is that partly because you're helping them kind of dig deep and find what their differentiators are and be able to message those properly? Is that part of what you're helping them with?
Yes, it's really identifying, what does the market want? What are their challenges? What are the hardest skills to hire for? What are their pain points? And then making sure that those companies are aligned with my client needs. So, for example, just because you're hiring for this role, I would tell you, maybe do not apply to that company. So to give you a prime example, one of my clients was looking to apply at Peloton. Loves Peloton. They definitely drink the Peloton Kool-Aid juice, where, they're huge fanatics, and that's why they wanted to work there. Overall, Peloton is a really great company. But for the role they were going after, I had them do an activity, and we realized that this company did not pass the green light. It looked like it was not going to be financially stable. It was not going to set them up for success. And it just wasn't the right time right now for them to move into that role. Well, a few months later, Peloton announced layoffs happening. So they were able to avoid that scenario and make better decisions to say, this company, will they set me up for success or not? And are they financially healthy for me to even make this pivot? So really understanding that. So not only understanding what is the market wanting and where are they at, and what is the potential, especially when it comes, we have a recession already in place or coming along or just around the corner. So we want to make sure that we go into companies that are going to be thriving through a recession. Right. There are companies and industries that do thrive during a recession. Right. Liquor is a prime example of that. And then not only that, it's then finding to make sure, is this company the right company for you and allowing you and meeting all your objectives? of doing that. And then combining that together, I use a lot of business, sales, and mindset persuasion techniques when it comes to building this career framework I've already created, called the 90-day job offer, and piecing all those three things together. It's really what makes my candidates stand out from the competition and get like at least a 56% in salary increases.
Yeah. Oh, I love that. And I'm super fascinated by mindset because I love money mindset work. And so can you give us a little idea of what you do with respect to mindset?
Yes. So a topic I love to talk about is, especially when it comes to mindset, is salary negotiation, or identifying what is your salary for your next role. So the average person, what they tend to do is they'll say, well, and just to make things easier, if I'm making $100,000 currently in my role, let's just say as a manager, it only makes sense that I should ask maybe for 110, 115 if I'm applying for a director role. So we base off our next salary based on how much we're making now. And that is the worst thing you can do. So it is hard for someone to think, well, I should be asking for $180,000 for a director role. That's crazy. How can I even ask for 180? That would be nice, but I'm currently making $100,000 as a manager. Maybe once I have years of experience as a director role, then I can ask for the 180. The analogy I like to use is like buying a home. If you buy a home for $100,000 and now you're ready to sell it, and I'm willing to offer $300,000 for that same home, which actually can be pretty common in today's housing market. Are you really going to tell me no to that $300K offer because you paid $100? So maybe you should sell it for $120,000. It only makes sense. Yeah. Of course not. You would say like $300,000. Yes, of course. You had a really great deal, and you won out of 100 plus offers I received. This is a great deal for you. So the same thing we want to do with our salary. We don't want to ask based on how much we're making. We want to ask what the market is paying. So maybe this role, the director role, pays up to 180 to 200,000. Well, we're going to ask for the 180, 200,000. Mm-hmm. We're not going to ask for 115, 120 because the market is willing to pay for that much, and that's how much the value and how much the companies are willing to pay for. So that's what we're going to be asking for, not basing it off how much you're currently making. So that is why my clients get, huge salary increases, and it's because they're being grossly underpaid so much. Most people do not negotiate their salary. They don't know how much to ask for. So they're always leaving money on the table. And especially when it comes to women and women of color. I mean, like I said, I had a client go from making 180 to getting a job for 300,000 just because she was grossly underpaid. But now packaging her and making sure we're selling her the right way and we're focusing on the right things, she was able to make that huge jump in salary.
I love that. Love it. Love it. And you answered a bunch of my next questions as you kept talking. So, that's so fantastic for people to know how to think about that salary, because you're so right. And I've heard it so many times. Well, I was making this, so maybe I could get that. And it's always just not based on value, not based on what's going on, just based on their own personal experience. And you're right. What if they were severely underpaid before? So it's ridiculous to base it on that for so many reasons. But it's natural. And it's somewhat, just a lack of education on how to do it is informing that. But also, I think it's somewhat fear-based. And so that's where that mindset help that you're giving them is really powerful. Because that whole, like, who am I to ask for more, or whatever comes up in your mind starts churning around. And then you brought up the fact that it's a bigger deal for women, and women of color. And so I think it's really important to remember that. And that's fantastic that you're holding their hand through that process. And I think it's hard to do, actually, without somebody saying, yeah, that's what you need to do. Go do it. I'm watching you. I think that's probably, worth it, whatever they're paying you to help them, because it's just that little bit. The salary negotiation part is huge.
Yeah. So. And I feel like that even like I said, I work with a lot of clients that are managers, directors, senior directors, and some executives as well. And they'll say, I have no idea. I'm guessing this will be a nice salary. Mm-hmm. And just even in their career strategy call that I offer complimentary, I let them know, like, by the way, you are under asking right now. You're asking for a salary of 150 For this role, it actually pays close to 200K. I'm not even including any benefits on top of that. That's just base salary. So I at least walk away with knowing like, oh, I at least know how much I should be aiming for or asking for based on what the marketplace is currently paying for. Right. And it does change a little bit, but usually, one example is I had a client where they were making 90,000 and they got a job offer for 120. And they're like, oh my God, this is such a great offer. That's 30K more. But I already knew, but I knew this for so long that they can actually get up to 150. That's how much the market was paying. So this client decided like 120 is more than enough. It's already a 30K increase. I'll take it. Took the role. And a year later came back and said, Claudia, you were right. I should have stayed and asked for the 150 because I found out everyone else is making the 150 for the same amount of work that I'm doing. And I'm realizing how much I'm being underpaid. So there's that thing of like, yeah, this salary sounds really great. But if you don't know how to identify really how much are they willing to offer and what does that entire amount look like or have budgeted for, you might still be getting a 30K salary increase, but you may be still leaving another $30,000 extra on the table. So it's how do we make sure that never happens again? And how do we create this so that way it's a repeatable process? So no matter if you're moving to that first manager, director, senior director, or executive role, how do you make sure like how much is in the entire pot and how to ask for that and making sure we're not leaving money?
Yeah, absolutely. Great point. Great, kind of view of the whole picture, because once you get into that role and then you find that out, I mean, that really puts a big damper on your experience for one thing. And yeah, so you bring up a few interesting points here that I want to address. So I don't actually know if I've never worked myself in the tech industry, but when I was in my corporate life, in order to get the big increases, you would leave the company you were at and move to a different company. So is that primarily what you're doing or what you're helping people with? Or can you stay within an organization and move up and still get those same kinds of increases? So
the client I mentioned that I got a $120,000 salary increase, she moved internally. So the strategy works both internally and externally. It really just depends. And what I mean by it depends, because I personally hate that answer. Like, what do you mean it depends? Well, what I mean is it depends on what your company is and the culture. Maybe you want to leave the company because it's toxic and you've already been passed up for 3-4 promotions and they tend to always promote men and you've done all your work and they have this belief that pretty much it's a boys club. Well, we're probably not going to be able to get you that salary increase and money just because of what the culture or environment looks like. So we're going to get you out of that environment and put you in one that you are able to thrive in. Now, there are clients where they're like, hey, I know there's opportunities. I just don't know how to navigate it or tap into or just break into that director role or that senior director role. Well, then that's when I help you assess. Isn't your current company still prospect for your next role? And if it isn't, we look externally. And if it is, we use both strategies, both internally and externally. And I've even had clients where they'll say, I love my company. I just outgrow my position, maybe my department, and I want to pivot. I just don't know how to make that transition. Right. But I want to stay within my company. So there are 3 opportunities or 3 strategies depending, again, now if you hate your company, you're like, I don't care what department offers me. I just want to run out of here as soon as possible and go elsewhere. Then yes, it's all about how do you feel right now about the company? What are the opportunities available at your current company? And what are you looking to achieve from it? So once we answer those 3 questions, that gives us a strategy to say, here's what you need to do. It's either A, B, and C. And here's kind of like the fastest and easiest route that, again, will set you up for success.
Yeah. Okay. Great. And, I'm assuming being in this workspace that you're identifying and discovering the companies that are more favorable to women and women of color. Is that part of it, that you're aware of what's going on out and what cultures are more toxic than others and more accepting and better than others?
Yeah, one of the strategies I teach in my program, 90-Day Job Offer, is really how to fully assess a company. So yes, make sure that we have a company that is not toxic, making sure that we go into a company that's inclusive and has these opportunities. Because most of the time it's, I'm not sure if you heard of this stat or kind of like this background, but McKinsey did a study called Women in the Workplace 2021, and they realized that women actually in senior leadership roles drops by 75%. So men and women are hired at the same rate when it comes to entry-level positions. Now, men get promoted a lot faster. So for every 100 men that get promoted, around, I believe it's 86 women that get promoted. Okay. So as you can see, as time goes on, the discrepancy tends to happen when it comes to leadership. Yeah. So men and women are hired at the same rate, but there's a 75% drop when it comes to women in senior leadership roles. Mm-hmm. So making sure of like, well, how do we identify that? Is it because, there's no opportunities? Is it because the company just doesn't promote women? Or is it because a little bit something more in depth? Like maybe you don't know how to sell yourself. Maybe you don't know how to interview. Maybe you're not even accustomed to like how to brand yourself, or even starting like a whisper campaign to get yourself promoted internally. So it's really assessing those things, but also finding the right company, because some clients are looking for different things. Some of them are looking for the opportunity to move into a senior leadership role. Some companies are looking for someone that's a little bit more understanding of their current kind of life cycle that they're currently in. Mm-hmm. So a good example is I have a client where she wants to move into a senior director role, but she currently has kids at home. So she wants to be able to log off at 3 p.m., pick up her kids, spend time with them, eat dinner, and then she's more than happy to log on again around 8 p.m. and work until midnight or so. Well, it's all about finding that right company that says, I don't care when you get your work done. We also value family. We know and we trust you that you can handle both. Mm-hmm. And you can log in and work at your own time. Just make sure that we're able to meet our business goals. Right. So it could be like finding those right companies that have the same values as you. So that way you can spend time with family, but you're still offering the same value to the company in itself, where they're still getting you at their top peak performance, mm-hmm. But also understanding that you do have a life and you have other things, but it depends. Again, every client has different needs and wants and where they're currently at in their life cycle. Right. Whereas other clients are like, I'm an empty nester. I'm ready to work hard. And now I'm ready to break into that chief technology role. I'm willing to put in the hours and whatever is needed or networking time in order for me to move into that. So mm-hmm. It's really assessing where you are in your life. What are the most important things to you, and how we can help you identify those right companies that will get you there.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, very interesting. So, there's so many things to talk about. I love this. Are you finding that the opportunities are there for women in general? I mean, to me, a recession coming, these kinds of things. While I hear about companies either stopping their hiring or even laying people off, I mean, it's a little counterintuitive to me, because the world runs on technology. It's like that can't go anywhere, recession or no recession. As a matter of fact, some of it, like you said, will just beef up at this point. So how do you address those concerns with people?
There's definitely companies that are hiring. I was even looking at just chief technology and chief information officer roles available, and there's over 16,000 positions. Mm. Now, even if you go on LinkedIn and look up director or manager, whatever that position is that you're looking for, there's going to be a lot of job postings out there, especially if you're open to working remote. The opportunities just expand. But again, we don't have enough time to be applying to like 16, 20,000 jobs. Yeah. 2, maybe some of them just don't fit our parameters, whether it's salary, responsibilities, expectations. Mm-hmm. And then 3rd, making sure that the company will set you up for success. If we have so much limited time and effort we can put in. Most of my clients have full-time jobs. Yeah. They still have a life. Yeah. They still want to spend time with their family or hang out with their friends on weekends, whatever that is to them, and they're still job searching, time and effort is very limited. Mm-hmm. So how can we make sure that the time and effort we're going to put in is actually going to get us the jobs and offers we're looking for? So it's really understanding of, I call it parameters of success. What are we looking for? And then if it doesn't meet these criteria or check off these boxes, we don't even spend time with them. Mm-hmm. So that way, my clients don't find themselves spending so much time applying to jobs and interviewing them to find out that the salary is not aligned with what they're looking for. Or they're going to have to move and relocate, and they're not looking to do that right now. So that's time wasted. Let's focus on what we really want, and then let's be specific and targeted and tactical, and then only focus on those companies that offer all those things we want checked off. And then now all of a sudden, we're not worried about 16, 20,000 jobs. Now we're focusing on 15, 20 jobs, and we know exactly their pain points, what they're looking for, what has been the hardest skills to hire for in this role, and what does success look like for them. And then that's how you position, and you're able to outbeat all other candidates.
Yeah. Yeah. I love that. You mentioned something about a whisper campaign. Do you want to talk about that for a minute? Just kind of explain what that is.
Yeah. So I mean, it's usually used when it comes to landing executive roles, but you can also use it for director, senior director roles. So it's more of like, how do you start building a network internally and sometimes externally, but still connected to the company? So what I mean by that is, maybe you're looking to move into the senior director role, and there might be 3-4 directors, and there's one senior director role that might be available. Well, how do you start building mentors within your company so that way when they are trying to do the org chart, they start mentioning your name? Oh, Michelle will be really great for the senior director role. She's been able to do A, B, and C, or I vote for Michelle. Yes, I vote for her too. She's really great. So all of a sudden, people are mentioning your name when you're not even allowed to in those spaces. So you want to make sure that they're advocating on your behalf and they know how to brand and sell you. So not just, oh, Michelle is great. No, Michelle will be really great for the senior director role because she has experience in A, B, and C. And I think that with what we're trying to do within this position, she'll be perfect because she's done something similar. And then her background expertise is really going to help us get there. By far, she's my number one candidate. I vote for that role. So people start mentioning your name, maybe top clients that are very valuable to the company, especially if they're bringing in, 10, 15% of the annual revenue, start saying, you know what, Michelle is great. I worked with her. I love working with her. She's by far the best. And she would be great for this role, especially because I think she'll work really well with some of our executives in this position. So all of a sudden, everyone is saying your name, that when it comes to creating that org chart Michelle is the number one contender. We're not even thinking about anyone else at this point. We don't even want to open this out externally. Let's just reach out to Michelle to see if she's interested in moving into the senior director role and what does that look like and how we can start for filling up her role. So it requires a little bit more strategy. It's not like you apply to the job, but if you're able to do this, then it makes the process easier because you're not competing against anyone. It's more of it's more of a question of how can you ensure that you are asking for the right amount when it comes to salary based on these new responsibilities, and how do you position yourself for success? So that's what a whisper campaign looks like. It's actually very important when it comes to an executive role, because for executive positions, for the most part, it's not like you get to apply on a job board. It's most of my clients I've landed executive roles is because they were tapped in the shoulder and said, hey, Michelle, we have a chief technology officer role opening up. I think you'd be really great. Why don't you come in and meet the rest of the board and the executive board as well? And that way we can see if this is a good fit or not and have this conversation. So it's not just works internally within your company, but also externally. So that's what a whisper campaign looks like. And like I said, it sometimes can take a little bit longer, but it's a lot more successful. And you're not really competing with a lot of other people because you already have so many advocates and people putting their votes in for you and mentioning your names in rooms that you may not have access to or even be able to get in at that point.
Yeah, very interesting. I mean, networking is so important, but I don't think we often think about it in terms of, internally networking like that. So that's a great tip, especially for the long term. For people to know that now, even if they're not planning to move up for a few years. So yeah, that's really, really good. Anything else like that? I also want to get to any other secret tips like that people or terms people may not have heard. And also, you mentioned that you wanted to talk to the entrepreneurs out there about how to hire tech positions, what to look for in terms of leadership and technology. So I'll let you have it to answer both those.
Yeah, so one thing I would say is making sure, like for some of the career or the professionals, or maybe thinking of job searching, a good rule of thumb is I would say, if you're an individual contributor role, meaning you don't manage a team, you should not be in that role for more than 3 years. After 3 years, you start becoming stagnant. You're not learning anything new, and you need to push yourself to move to the next step in your career.
Interesting.
So if you're like been in the individual contributor, now you're over 3 years, well, it's time for you either apply for a job, and it could be laterally. So it either expands and exposes you to another process or system or another side of the industry or client network, whatever that is. But it's time you become stagnant after 3 years and you start losing that competitive edge or advantage, and you're delaying and not sharpening your skill sets. Now, if you're a manager, supervisor, or manager, anywhere between 3 to 5 years, again, is that scope of work. And even actually directors. So supervisors, managers, directors, I recommend 3 to 5 years. If you've been in that role for more than 5 years, highly recommend, again, you're ready for the next step in your career. So that's a good point of view. Now, if you're more in a chief executive role, usually they expect anywhere between 7 to 10 years.
Okay.
After that, again, you start becoming stagnant in the marketplace. So that's a good rule of thumb to figure out, like, am I ready for this next step, or should I start searching? If you follow those parameters or that rule of thumb, the answer is yes, you're ready to get started. Now, when it comes to for the business entrepreneur, like, well, how do I make sure I get good talent, or maybe I don't want them to negotiate? Like, should I be weary of that? Well, one of the things that, and what stats have shown, is when you provide fair market value for a job that you have for a client, then it is more likely for them to stay within the company, and then it reduces your expenses when it comes to hiring. Yeah. So that example of a client that was making 90, got offered 120, but the most competitors or all the companies are offering 150. That client only stayed at the company for 1 year. And on average, I think it takes at least $16,000 to $20,000 to make a new hire, especially when it comes to like manager, director level positions. So had they just given my client 150 from the beginning, that client would have stayed at that company. Yeah. Well, because they were not paid fairly what the market rate was paying, they left after a year. So now the company still had to spend that extra $16,000, $20,000 to make that hire. Not only that, the new hire probably takes on average 6 to 9 months to get really into like knowing the company and the process and the workflow and the clients and really get onboarded. Yeah. Well, that's already cost them a little bit more at this point, of close to $100,000. If they would have just given the client the $30K, they would have had a better ROI based on that candidate. Yeah. So make sure that you do offer fair market prices. And if you negotiate, or if the candidate negotiates, it's actually a sign of one, you get to assess how good are they with negotiation. If they're able to negotiate and make a good business case, well, now you can trust that candidate to negotiate on behalf of the company. They're comfortable having these conversations. They're ready to build a business case in your behalf and of the companies to say, well, can we reevaluate, the scope of work and contracts and terms? So if they can negotiate on behalf of themselves, know that they can negotiate on behalf of the company. And that's a really great skill set to have, especially if they're managing a team. You don't want to hire someone that they can't negotiate on their behalf, but yet they're going to be managing a team where they were going to have these conversations.
So interesting. This is great. And you had also talked a little about moving from some of these positions and transitioning into something new. Do you want to just talk about some of the things that you've seen that have been interesting transitions?
Yeah, a lot of my clients, like I mentioned, have usually around over 15 years of experience, and they kind of just find themselves, especially when it came to COVID, lockdown, working from home, kind of came to a realization of, I don't like this industry. I really don't like this role, and it's not fulfilling anymore. And I've been doing this for so long, and it maybe started off as an internship, or I got my first job at this company thinking it was going to be temporary. And now 15 years, I'm still in this industry or this role or this company, and this is not what I want to do. I want to do something else. Well, usually the assumption is, well, if you're going to make a pivot or transition, well, then you're probably going to have to start from scratch, or you're going to have to take a step back, or you're going to have to take a pay cut. And maybe you need some certifications, or maybe you need another degree in order to help you get there. And what I found and what's been proven with my clients is that is not the case. I've had clients pivot industries, roles, and still been able to get salary increases and not have to take a step back. So one of the strategies that I like to use is making sure, again, that I set up my clients for success and always having that market differentiator or that competitive advantage. Mm-hmm. So a good exercise, if you're thinking, well, I would love to pivot into a different industry or do something very different. Usually when it comes to industries, what I like to do is look at adjacent industries. So for example, Michelle, give me a type of industry that they're currently in that they might want to break into. What have you seen maybe from some of your listeners?
Yeah, well, finance for sure. I mean, people in finance, attorneys, they oftentimes want to go and try something, different from what they're doing. Different, they're tired of accounting finance, for example.
So let's just pretend that, like you said, they work as a lawyer, as an attorney, they're in that industry, and they want to pivot into tech. Well, what I would tell this client is, well, as a lawyer, what tools and technologies do you use to do your daily work? Oh, you have to submit your timesheets or how many hours so we can bill the client. Maybe use Workday. Oh, you've had to use this specific technology that kind of sources and files through your documentation. Maybe use a relatively software. Maybe you are able to use this portal to communicate with clients. Maybe use Salesforce. Well, then what I would recommend is, as an attorney, you want to move into the tech space. Well, let's look at Salesforce, Workday, and Relativity companies. And now you have a competitive advantage because you have the client's point of view. Not only that, you've used the technology, so you know the pain points that you currently have and you're experiencing, what you love about this product, when does it work and when it doesn't work. And now that's going to make you stand out from the competition when it comes to this specific position. So maybe you want to move more into sales and you're an attorney for whatever reason. Right. Or maybe you want to move into like working with clients now that are attorneys. Well, that's how we're going to look for those industries or companies that focus or have verticals in that specific industry. We're going to identify what value you're bringing, because you are bringing value to that organization, and what pain points and skill sets are you helping to fill that they currently have a gap in. And then we're going to brand you and package you for that specific role. Sometimes you may have to take a quick, certification course or something you can do on LinkedIn. I mean, honestly, for most of my clients, 95% of them never have to take any certification. It's just more of identifying what are their pain points, what are their skills and knowledge gap. And if you have it, how can we package it so that way we can communicate that to them through all our marketing assets, resume, cover letter, LinkedIn, and then how do we bring that again through the interview? And that's how my clients have been able to make pivots into different industries, still get salary increases, and still not having to take a pay cut or having to start from scratch or taking a demotion in order to break into that industry. Mm-hmm.
Oh, I love that. I love that you kind of busted that myth too, that you have to, if you're going to change, you have to almost start over pay wise as well as everything else. That's great. Those are great tips. And I love what you said about value, because as I'm listening to you, people, they will address their value at kind of a surface level. And I think it takes a coach like you to help them really find, their value in a more expansive way. I think it's very hard for us as individuals, any of us, to really identify and be able to communicate our value alone on our own. So I think that's a huge help that you provide for people.
That's a great point, Michelle. A really great quick example that I wanted to bring up. And actually, this is an experience that I had. I applied for a role and I only qualified about 30%. So that's another myth. Do you need to, I read a stat that women feel like they need to qualify at least 80-90% in order to apply for a role, while men feel like they need to qualify 60 to 70%. When I was job searching, I actually looked, does this sound interesting? Because a lot of it for the most case is transferable skills. If you looked at the paper, I probably qualified only 30%. Yeah. And for this specific role, they were looking for someone with a nursing degree and nursing background and clinical knowledge. Well, I have none of those things. I don't have a nursing degree. I don't have any clinical knowledge. If I see blood or needles, I get queasy and I run away from the room. And I applied for a role at a hospital. Well, because I know how to do this, I had someone refer me into that role. I was able to get an interview. I did a lot of my work ahead of time. So I already knew what objections were going to come up. I already knew what were their pain points. And one thing I asked at the end was, do I have your support in moving forward to next steps? And it told me, Claudia, I think you're great, but we're really looking for someone with a clinical background and a nursing degree. And unfortunately, you don't have that. Well, sometimes not having experience and skill set can be your advantage. I already knew that they were looking to hire someone to improve their patient experience because patient experience for them was very low. And two, payout and how they get reimbursed depends on what their patient experience scores is. So the higher the score, the higher the payout. So I knew that was a true pain point and that there was an ROI. Well, they were looking to improve the patient experience. So I told them, I totally understand. I don't have a clinical background. I don't have a nursing degree, but based on what we discussed so far and what you're looking to achieve in this role is really improving the patient experience. Because I don't have that clinical knowledge and background, I can give you the patient perspective. If I can't understand it, our patients will not be able to understand it. And that's where I can bring my value, really assessing what are the patient's pain points and how can we create that environment and provide resources in order for them to be supported and helpful with a lens of someone that doesn't have that background, because I won't be blind or blindsided from my clinical background or experience because I don't have that. Instead, I can understand more of our patients and what are their pain points are and how to be able to communicate with them when most of our patients do not have that clinical background. Well, I got the job in a $30K salary increase. But again, I already had done my work beforehand, so I already knew how to address it. I knew what the value was going to be in, and I knew their pain points and how to address it. And it comes through preparation. And again, this is something that anyone can do when you have the right strategy, the right framework, and you learn to really understand what does the market really want and how to address it and what value can you bring in to close that knowledge and skill gap.
Oh, I love that. That's a great example. And it also speaks to the fact that sometimes they don't even know themselves when they're looking for the candidate what value they need. So if you can articulate that, then they'll see it your way. So yeah, thank you so much. I could talk to you all day. We are going to have to wrap up, but this has been super fascinating, and I hope it's helped people to see some of the complexity of doing this, and like you say, the strategy that if you implement a strategy in doing this, it'll just go so much better for you. And I think that's very hard for people to figure out on their own. So can you tell people how to contact you, how to find you?
Of course. So you can find me at my website, claudiatmiller.com. And there I have resources. You can also follow me on LinkedIn, Claudia T. Miller. And I always like to share free resources, strategies, testimonies, and case studies to really help the current job seeker. I even did a session a few weeks ago on how to build how to recession-proof your career. So whether you're job searching or not, how do you know if you should be protecting your career or if you should just start job searching, and how to identify and keep a pulse in your company in the marketplace to identify if you need to start preparing for that or not. And then, of course, let me know or let us know give a review to the podcast, and then let us know what strategies you really enjoyed. And of course, what other questions you have about job searching. And I'd be happy to kind of help you answer that or give you some strategies. But if you're a woman in tech right now and you're looking to pivot into that director, senior director, or that chief technology role, I'm offering complimentary career strategy calls. So it's no obligation, no risk. It's more of an assessment of, what are you currently looking for? If I'm able to help you and if it's a good match, then I tell you a little bit more on how I can help you get there. And if it's not, I'd be more than happy to offer you or refer you to some resources.
Thank you so much. This has been great, and I really am happy that the listeners got to meet you and hear from you, and I would highly recommend that people follow you. And that's just great. Thank you so much for the work that you do. It's really important. And really,
thanks, Michelle.
Really
thanks again for having me on.
Yeah, my pleasure. And thank you, listeners, for being here with us today on the Money and You Show. We love having you. We would appreciate any likes or subscribes or reviews that you feel like you'd like to give us. The podcast airs on ubngo.com as well as the YouTube, my Limit Free Life YouTube channel, all the podcast platforms. And so we love bringing you this kind of information, really helpful and hopefully inspiring. If you've been thinking about a change but have been, a little afraid, there's a recession coming, whatever, contact Claudia, listen to the show, get yourself inspired, because I think in any circumstance you're able to make a transition. You just have to think it through and prepare. So thank you so much for being here. I'm getting ready to launch my money date course, which helps you learn how to date and fall in love, or at least be good friends with your money. And so that should be very helpful to those of you who want a better relationship with your money. It's coming up on August 16th, and you can find the information at the Limit Free Life, limitfreelife.com. Thank you, my website. So we are here every Monday, airing at 7 o'clock on UBN Go. We will see you next week. Thanks for being here.